Hi everyone, it's Niamh here. Welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be making another interactive pages using Peekaboo's circle page in my journal. So I've got these new Dina Wakley circle stamps which I really love. And I'm just stamping them up onto my large craft journal. So you can see how clearly they stamp up. And I had this idea that I wanted to have this sort of like peekaboo page hidden like an advent calendar type page on in my journal. No rhyme or reason for it other than I thought it'd be a fun page to do. I've just done another interactive page in my smaller craft journal and I was on a roll. So I've just stamped out the images just to get the circle shapes. Now when I originally did this, I had the idea that I could actually use these pieces for another project. Little did I know that I'd actually incorporate them back into this project. So plans change as you do things. Cutting in the craft journal, it is really good to cut. It's fairly simple to cut, but you do need a sharp blade when you're cutting. And you can see I'm turning my book rather than my wrist. So make sure you do that. I've also got a cutting board in between my pages, really important. This is a really thin one from IKEA. It's just a chopping board. I just like it. The green mats are fantastic, but they're a bit chunky to put into journals. So the fact that this is sort of thin and easy to cut through, I find really easy. Once I had cut out my shapes, I then decided I wanted to stamp in the background. So this set of leaves is from a new stamp set as well called Seeing is Believing. Really chunky leaves, which I really like. And I'm just stamping it all over. I love the way that stamping looks on the craft journal. You can get quite a bold look straight away. So the page is sort of taking shape as I went along. I did think that I was going to outline my leaf shapes with the white pen, but the unsealed craft paper, well, you could say does take paint really well and actually seeps in really quickly, so it doesn't sit in the surface. So particularly white pens, and you need to do a few coats of them before it'll sit in, or do it over the top of, if I did it over the top of it now when I've got acrylic paint on here, you would see it a lot better. So just be aware. By putting the ink on, it's not necessarily sealing the page like acrylic paint would do, so it still seeps into the fibre of the paper. So I decided to go back to plan B, which was just paint in the leaves. Now it's quite unusual for me to actually just use paint to do this. Usually I just grab my paint pen, but you know, I had all the paint sitting next to me, I might as well use them. So this is the fur, one of the newer colours from Dina Wakley, the dark green. I was going to say blue. I don't know what's wrong with me. And I'm not being very particular about how I'm doing it. I'm just sort of painting it in. But as I was going, I thought, I'm losing a little bit of detail. So I decided to go back with a little bit of evergreen and just sort of put a few strokes in like I would do with my paint pens and blend them together. So you'll notice I haven't actually dried anything. It is fairly dry because obviously I'm just putting on a little bit of paint, but there's enough there that, you know, in the wet areas I can sort of blend it together a little bit. I'm also going in with a little bit of lime green as well, just to sort of give a little bit of, you know, highlight and colour and so on. So it looks a little bit more interesting than it did previously. So I was quite liking how it was all going together. It was very relaxing sitting here and, you know, just painting in the little different bits and pieces. And as you can see, I'm just painting in to put in as much paint as I had on my page, so I didn't have to waste very much. And now I'm drying it all off, so I've got a bit of an idea of how I can turn the page. And I've just drawn through the circles so I could paint them in. And I had this idea that I was going to use just really bright colours in the background, so it would be a real contrast. I'm not sure I'm particularly happy with choosing to do that, really, but it works in the end. I think this is one of the reasons why I changed my plan at the last minute, because it was quite jarring compared to everything else on the page. But as you can see here, people often ask me why I like the Dina Wakley paints. I like them because they're really opaque. So the yellow is a big one for me. I don't usually like using yellow all that much because it tends to be very see-through and transparent. The fact that that is very bold on a craft page, I really like. So I'm trying to sort of balance up my colours a little bit. So I've got, you know, a mix of warms and cools. At this stage I wasn't 100% sure that I wasn't going to have that page flip so you could sort of see the front and the back. What I did realise as I was doing this was I had the bright idea I was just going to stamp through the circles, but I realised I would probably have to actually stamp here, and I didn't necessarily remember which stamps I put in which spot, so it was a bit of guess and check as I was doing this. Obviously I had the pencil lines there, so I could sort of work out the shape from the pencil lines, because each of those circles are very organic. They're not all, you know, the same, exactly the same shape, so I could sort of work out which one was more a squashed oval shape and so on. You can see I lined most of them up pretty well apart from the bottom green one. I have a bit of a gap. And then I went back in with my paint pen and added the whites of the eyes. I think if I had left it like this in hindsight, I would have been quite happy, but I decided I was going to add a little bit more colour to it because it's me. And I think that's what sort of threw me off a bit. So, you know, listen to yourself as you do these things. I also decided I would go back in with some extra stamps and stamp in some of the more open spaces, which again, you know, in hindsight probably didn't need to do, but I like the fact that I could do it. So, you know, just because you've got a stamped shape doesn't necessarily mean you have to keep it that way. You can add some other different bits and pieces to it. So I grabbed out my scribble sticks, and my thought process between choosing the colours is pretty much, you know, look at your complementary colours and opposite colours, which I didn't mind until I got to the yellow, because I went red and green on top of it, and it just reminded me of Christmas, and it was just all wrong. I really didn't like that one, and it just stood out much more than all the other ones, and I was having a bit of a colour crisis in my head, and I couldn't work out how to fix it up, so I decided to go and add colour onto these two shapes, which I wish I hadn't done, but you know, hindsight and all that, it all works out well. I also decided just to fill in that little gap with a little bit of I was going to say turquoise blue night colour, so you could just hide the fact that it was slightly offset. I also went in with my white pen and added a little bit more line detail, which I didn't mind too much. You just need to be careful working over the scribble sticks. It is water activated. Obviously there's not that much water in a Posca paint pen, but it is liquid, so it was picking up a little bit of colour from the scribble stick. So I decided to go back just with that yellow to dull it down a little bit, because yellow really isn't my favourite colour, I have to say, and put a little bit more of this text in there. So this is where I sort of thought I was leaving my page. Not bad as is, but you know, there you go. Then I decided I was going to use the pieces that I had left over to make a little book. But as I was sort of putting them together, because they're all different shapes, didn't quite go the way I wanted it to. And then, because it's me, I decided to do a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle and pop them back in where they need to be on the page. And I actually quite liked having the craft back there. So I decided, I could have a peekaboo page. So I have just stamped some of the leaf onto some of the canvas tape and cut them out. And I decided I would paint them the same colours as I had them in the book. And I was going to use this as my hinges for my little openings. So they're not going to stand out, they're sort of going to blend into the background of my piece, and you know, it's not going to quite line up with the stamped leaves underneath, but it'll be close enough that it will. The shape's the same sort of stamping over the top and so on, and the canvas tape is quite strong, so I knew it would hold the pieces in place where they needed to be. I'm just going in with the same colours I had in the background and spreading them out. Now you will find that the canvas tape takes a little bit more paint to cover. However, once I sort of put on really sort of scrappy looking paint, I then just got a wet paintbrush and really wet out my paint. You can see I'm adding more and more water to it just to fill in the gaps, and it works really, really well. So don't be afraid to add water to your canvas tape. It does take it, and it's a really great way to get a more smooth coat or colour on it. And then I just hit it with a heat gun afterwards. Probably shouldn't do that, but it worked. So you can see here I'm just peeling off the back and then sticking down the leaves to use as hinges. Again, not really thinking about anything other than where can the leaf fit in, that it's not actually going to interfere with another door opening. So you can see me sort of checking out to see how they work. Once I've got the doors there, they are quite tight fitting, so I decided I needed to have a little bit of tab on them to help open them up and to give the impression that they do open. So I'm just using a little bit of washi folded over. I did use sort of greeny washi tapes. I probably should have used like a leaf shape, but you get the idea. The fact that it's just slightly different from all the leaves in the background gives you an idea that you can sort of pull them up and have a look underneath. I also went in with my white pen again to put in the whites of the eyes, and you can sort of see here that it does take a little bit more to get the white coming out, because again it's soaking into the page. So here's a close-up of the closed windows with all those leaves, and then we've got some of the windows open, so you can see how they fold back in different directions. So those canvas leaves really sort of blend in, but they work as the hinges for each of those pages, and then you can sort of pop all the pages open. Now if you wanted to do, you could certainly journal on the back of those little doors. I've done that in the past, or put other stamping on them. You know, use your imagination how you want to do it. If you want to adapt this, I've done a similar page to this and actually put real photos underneath. So if you're a bit of a scrapbooker, or you know, private journaling, you want to hide your journaling, doing pages like this is really, really fun, but it's a great way to hide stuff on your journal pages too. So I hope that helps you out and gives you some inspiration for these new stamp sets. Until next time, bye for now.